Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living. Today my guest is Andrew Petro. He's the author of Remembering the Light. It's about his experience of when he was 18 years old of having a near-death experience. And we are going to speak about his life during that time and his life after that time and the present moment. Andrew, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you have a lecture this evening.
Yes.
You'll be speaking this evening here in Marin County.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you for taking your time.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. So if I explained the process that I went through, it was a few days before our graduation, and our class had decided to have a picnic. So this was in Michigan. We went to a lake outside of Detroit for our class picnic. While we were there at the lake, it was a beautiful summer day. Sun was out, the water was perfect, and there was a floating platform about 50 to 100 yards out. And a lot of my friends swam out there early, and they were waving to me to come and meet with them and have fun on the platform. So it was very cold water. I jumped in and started swimming to the lake. About halfway there, I started feeling cramps. I had cramps in the lower part of my abdominal area, and my legs were cramping up. And all of a sudden, I couldn't kick anymore. And I started to sink. So now I'm sinking, and I'm flapping around, and all of a sudden water is coming in my mouth, down my nose, starting to fill my lungs. I'm trying to scream out, but I can't make any sound because I'm bobbing up and down in the water. And then finally I get one chance to look up, and I scan, and I can see the floating dock, and they're waving at me. They think we're playing a drowning game. Well, it's not a game for me. I'm really drowning. And that's the last time I saw anything. Then I started to fall deeper and deeper into the lake, and all of a sudden I felt some slimy things at my feet, and those were the weeds at the bottom of the lake. By this time it was so dark I couldn't see. And I sank into the bottom of the lake, filled with muck and mud, and I was in a sitting position when I hit bottom. So I used my hands to try to push myself up, and they got stuck. Now I'm there, stuck in the bottom of the lake, freezing cold water, because it's Michigan and it's June, just the beginning of the season, and I'm shaking from the frigid water so bad that I can't control anything, and all of a sudden I hear a voice in my head, and the voice says, "Andy, stop for just a minute. You need to rest." And I said back to the voice, I'm almost talking to myself now, "No, I can't rest. I need one more breath of air, just one breath of air. That's all I really want." And the voice says, "If you just stop for a minute, you can then continue on with the struggle." And so I said, "Okay, all right, I'll stop." And the minute I said, "Okay, I'll stop," I popped out of my body, and I went into a tunnel. As I entered the tunnel, I turned around to look back, and I could see my body stuck in the mud at the bottom of the lake. And I wondered, how could that be? Because I'm not there. I'm here in this tunnel. And I looked upward towards the tunnel, and I saw this bright light, and it was so light, it was like 1,000 suns all exploding at the same time. And I remember saying, that should be burning my retinas out. But it was so bright, I didn't even blink. I could just look at it, and it drew me in like a gentle magnet, pulling me down the tunnel. And as I got about halfway down the tunnel from where the light was, I immediately popped into a big giant sphere. It was about the size of our high school gymnasium. And I'm hovering in the sphere, in the center of the sphere, with the light next to me, and all around in every direction, top, bottom, right, left, were motion pictures of me, of my life and my lives, and all the things that went on through years and years of living. And every time I would focus on one, I would actually feel myself drawn into it. And I was reliving it then. But it was different than living it the first time, because not only did I know what I was doing, but I could feel the feelings of everyone I was interacting with. And this went on for what seemed like hours. And then all of a sudden I popped out back into the tunnel again. And now I'm being absorbed by the light. And the light says three things to me. The light says, Andy, don't be afraid. Andy, I love you. Andy, we love you. And when the light said, Andy, we love you to me, surrounding the light are countless billions of other lights. And I knew them all. And I said to myself, it's so good to be home, because I knew that I was home. That's where I belong.
Well, I'd like to speak to you about your feelings, your emotions. Did you have any type of emotional attachment to what was happening, or any kind of fear, or any kind of hesitation, or any kind of emotions whatsoever as you were going through this tunnel, and as you were, as they say, watching your life flash before you on all these screens?
It was interesting. It's an interesting question, because there was absolutely no fear or apprehension. From the moment I popped out of my body, going down the tunnel, into the sphere and then into the light again, there was a feeling of overwhelming, unconditional love. I felt so loved by everything and everyone that I've struggled for over 50 years now trying to find the right words in the English language to explain the level and depth of love that I was consumed with. And there are none. Okay?
Well, let's try to define it.
Sure.
I've had experiences several times in my life where they call it nirvana or bliss state. And it happened spontaneously. Once it happened when I was in Greece, and once I was in Germany. And I got off a trolley in Germany, and as soon as my foot hit the pavement, I was snapped into this vortex of this incredible love, this incredible unconditional love that was so profound, and it was very vast. There was no limitations to it. It was boundless, and it was unlike any kind of rapture or any kind of love that I've ever experienced. It was so without any type of feeling to it, or any kind of defining that it was this or that. It was cold or it was hot, or it was feeling good or it was feeling lukewarm. It was just so, it was beyond all of that. So it was like golden rays of energy that were pulsating through my whole being, and I was merged with it, and it was merged with me at the same time. So I've heard this being described, and I'm getting a sense that this experience is very similar to what you experienced. That there is no human words to describe it.
That's right. I can just come up with analogies. So listening to what you just said is very close to what I felt, because it really is an overwhelming feeling, and it's a feeling of being loved to the extent that there is no comparison. It's not like, oh, it was really a great feeling of love or a lesser feeling of love. There are no adjectives to describe the unconditional love that I felt, because it was all encompassing. My vibrations, my body vibrations, my soul vibrations, the Andy vibrations blended in with the unconditional love in the light, and we became one. So it was so obvious to me that I had gone back home where I came from, and I came from unconditional love. And now I can remember what it was like when I was in three-dimensional space here on Earth, not having unconditional love, but having love of various types. Comparing that to the love that I felt in the light would be like if I held up a match and I lit a match, and then right next to me was the sun, and I'd say, this is the best love I ever had on Earth compared to the whole sun. Well, there is no comparison. They're both heat. One is a little match, and one is the sun of the universe.
Could one say that you were merging back to this place of an organic sense of unconditional love?
Yeah.
You were returning back to what was innately there within you, but when you were, before you had the death experience, the near-death experience, you were not connected to it. You were not aware of it.
Correct. I was searching for it. I spent a lot of time in my teens. I was a very religious person, and I was looking for a specific religion to give me the answers that I was searching for as a young child even. I was always searching for oneness. I didn't believe in separation. I didn't believe in... I grew up during World War II, when there was a lot of anger and hatred around the world for all kinds of things. And I was 4 or 5 years old trying to talk to my parents, and I'd say, I don't feel this anger and hatred for these other people because we're all one. And they didn't understand what I was talking about and thought I was crazy. So they told me to quit talking that way, that wasn't right.
Was this before? You were speaking that way before?
Yes, this was about 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, okay.
This is before I even went to school as a young child, because I would have visions of the light, of living in a world where everyone loved and accepted each other. We weren't all the same. I'm not saying that everybody's the same. Even in the light, all the pieces of the light aren't the same. We're all different individuals, but we come together as one. And when you put us all together, put all the lights in the universe together, we're all one as one light. So I find it difficult in talking to people because I have to speak in contradictions. How can you be individual but still be all one? How can you and I be the same but different?
Right.
Well, you can when you're in the light. Right in here, you can't, because you're sitting there, I'm sitting here. We're two different people. We can talk about being one, but we're not really one here. But if we were both to let go right now at this moment and went into the light, we could be Victoria and Andy, but then combined to be one.
Well, the question that begs to be answered, to ask, is how does one bring more light into their life? How does one live that? How does one stop that sense of separation from oneself and to others?
Okay. For me, since I have had the privilege of remembering being in the light and remembering what it was like there as compared to when I was told to come back, because I didn't want to come back. When the light said to me, Andy, you have to go back, I said, I don't think so. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back in that body. I don't want to go back to that earth. I don't want to go back to all that. I'm home and I want to stay here. And then the light said to me the second time, Andy, you're going back. And I said, no, I'm not going back.
Right.
And then they said the third time, you're going back. And by the time I heard the K in the word back, I was stuffed back into my body, which by this time was found at the bottom of the lake, dragged up onto the beach, and my friends were on top of me pushing the water out of my lungs. And now I'm coughing the water out of my lungs. I never lost consciousness in the entire episode. I never lost consciousness. I was aware of everything. And when I was aware that I was back in my body, the pain of being back in my body was horrendous. And I started to cry. And they thought I was crying because of the pain. But I was crying because I lost the light. And I was very angry at the light for a long time. Because here I was in the light. I was able to hold the universe in my hands. And now, for reasons I did not understand, I'm stuffed back into the crappy old body that I had before. And I got to go through all this stuff being back on Earth again. That didn't make sense to me. I wanted to be back in the light.
So how long did you actually leave your body?
Probably somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes.
Okay.
Because it took them a while to find my body because it was stuck in the weeds at the bottom of the lake. So they finally jumped off of the platform, and my friends found my body and dragged it back.
Were you pronounced dead, or were you breathing?
No, I wasn't breathing.
You were not breathing?
I was not breathing when they got me out, and back in those days they didn't have mouth to mouth. It was turn over and push on your lungs with my head turned, and then when I popped back into my body, then I immediately started coughing out the water from my lungs.
So returning back to the question of how to work with the light,
yes,
and this feeling of separateness to others that a lot of us would subscribe to.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What do you do with this? How has this helped you in your life now to understand of this unconditional love and this light?
Because when I was in the light and I was observing all of my activities, all of my life activities, when I was in the light observing them, there was not judgment. There was no good or bad. There wasn't good or evil. There wasn't right or wrong. They were just things that were done, choices made, that were either choices that fostered love and kindness and joy, or choices that fostered fear and hatred. And when you're in the light and you're looking at that, it's different than looking at it now. In this world, when I look at some atrocities, I feel really bad about that. And it's a different type of feeling when you're in the light. It's observing and understanding that you would not do that again. That wasn't a thing that helped promote love and kindness. It promoted separation and fear. And it's like looking at your life and being able to walk away from it as you would if you saw a very intense movie. When I see movies, I really get into it to the point where sometimes I'm living the movie for those few minutes. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the movie's over and I walk out. Well, I know it's a movie, okay? All the emotions that I had while I was watching it were still there, but when the movie's over, I know that it's not real. It was a movie.
I'm getting a sense of what you experienced is perhaps an experiential. It was a feeling of being totally immersed in the experience, and this experience was of this unconditional bliss of love.
Yes.
Where here we are not in the experiential, we are in, which henceforth makes the separation from us to others. So therefore, it is because we lose the moment. We're not in that moment. We're not in that moment of experiencing what is alive in ourselves and what's alive in the other person and others.
Yeah, because in the light, the thing that is so centered in me about the light is that it's not three-dimensional space. There isn't yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Right now I'm sitting here talking to Victoria. Yesterday I was at my home in Lincoln doing stuff. Tomorrow I'll be someplace else. In the light, I could be sitting talking to you, being at home yesterday, and going someplace tomorrow, all at the same point in time. And that's hard for people to understand because we live in a serial progression of time. In the light, everything happens in the eternal now. That's the best phrase I could come up with. The eternal now is everything that has happened, will happen, could happen, did happen, is all at the same point in time using English language of the point in time.
Yes. Andrew, you recently published your book, Remembering the Light.
Yes.
And you did it in a very interesting way, through the way of describing it through poetry.
Yes.
Instead of having it as a narrative, descriptive sense as others have done.
Correct.
And I would like to know, basically, after what happened, when this near-death experience happened, did it change you immediately? Did you embrace it? And how many years after what effect did it have on you?
Okay. All right. This happened in 1955.
Yes.
In 1955, the phrase near-death experience didn't exist. Nobody even knew what that meant, what that was. So, first of all, here I am, a religious person who has experienced something that would be spiritual, if not religious. My personal problem was that none of my religious experiences were there. I was with the light. There was no judgment. There was no hell. There was no good and bad. There was no big tally in the sky. There was just the light absorbing me and consuming me with unconditional love, in which I was able to consume and absorb everyone else with unconditional love. So that I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand it. So I spent 25 years like a nomad, roaming the earth, trying to figure out I don't know what to do. I thought I was crazy. I thought if I ever told anybody about this, that I would be locked up in a room with rubber walls and be there for the rest of my life. So I never spoke of it for over 25 years.
I spoke to others with a similar experience or the same experience, and they have a sense of a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of that they cannot talk about it. This is completely taboo.
Yeah. See, I had a similar thing at that time while I was going through it, because mine was fear-based. I thought if I tell anybody about this and they find out, somebody's going to get a hold of me and say, you're crazy, you can't have, that doesn't make sense, it's against everything that you ever experienced before you had that near-death experience, okay? So we're going to put you away. So in order to do that, I said, well, I'm searching. I got to find out. I became a fanatic. I picked up every book I could read on anything that was spiritual to try to see if it made sense. I investigated all various religions. I went into the seminary. I was going to be a priest, but I left a year before my vows because that couldn't do it. I still didn't know what to do. So then I went and did just the opposite, and I joined the Marine Corps, and I went away for years in the Marine Corps searching for something that I didn't know what it was. Searching, always searching, never finding anything. Always distressed until some 20, 25 years later, I pick up this book called, by Raymond Moody, Life After Life. And I don't even know, I just picked it up on a business trip. I grabbed it for some reason, I know not why, put it in my suitcase. When I got home, I opened it up and I started reading it. And I read it, the whole book, by 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't do anything. As I'm reading it, I started to cry because I realized I'm not crazy. That what I experienced is real. It was real for hundreds of people identified in the book. It was real for me. So now finally, what does all this mean? So now I can go back and relive it knowing that I'm not crazy. I know it may sound silly to anybody listening to me, but when you believe that you're crazy, it has a really bad effect on your life. You're making choices that don't make sense because you don't know what you're doing.
At what point in time in your life did you come across this book and start the process of acceptance?
It was about, I was like in my 30s, mid-30s.
Okay.
So I read that, and then now I really started searching for things. Now I really started reading spiritual-oriented things. I'm looking for answers. What I didn't realize was I had the answers. They were in my remembrances of the light. And then a strange thing happened to me that I haven't heard happen to anybody else with a near-death experience, is that I started waking up in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, with these words and images spinning around in my head over and over again, over and over again. Separation, separation, separation. Oh, vibrations, vibrations, vibrations. Love, 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 joy. And I couldn't fall asleep. And so I would get up, go to the den, turn the light on, grab a pen and pencil. I was very quiet so I wouldn't wake anybody else up in the house. And for an hour, I would write down a poem. And after an hour, I'd finish it, go back to bed, wake up a few hours later, pick it up and say, that's not bad. I wonder who did that. Because I didn't really remember writing it. I knew that I wrote it, but if you were to ask me right now, Andy, write a poem, I couldn't do Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue. I'm not a writer. So I finally realized that I wasn't writing the poem. The poems were an attempt from the light to allow me to find another way to explain what I felt in the light, to describe unconditional love through poetry, so that others could have some glimpse into the light that I had.
Well, this is a perfect moment for you to